Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, depending on when you're watching this edition or listening to it if you're on the audio version of the podcast of Hypnosis Week Live. It's me again, Alex William Smith by birth, but better known to many of you as Jonathan Royal, the British bad boy of hypnosis of magicalguru.com, and I am delighted to have a guest with us who, in terms of stage hypnosis in England, is definitely one of the longest established stage hypnotists that we've got. Anyone who knows the business, if you don't know, in England, let's just say that a lot of people who were in it went out of business in the sort of mid to late 90s. The gentleman I'm about to introduce you to is still doing it to this day. He's not just a stage hypnotist, he's also helped people, and I'm going to probe his mind about some of the experiences he's had with hypnotherapy. And also he shares another one of my loves, which is magic. I don't mean devil worshipping magic. I mean magic as in Paul Daniels, David Copperfield, and pulling rabbits out of hats and all that kind of sleight of hand and entertaining forms of trickery. So please welcome to the show the man who is, you can see him on screen, but for those who've not yet met him, Mr. Dave Rawson. How are you doing, buddy?
Yeah, morning. Fine, good.
So look, Dave, where I mentioned what you do now. As such, although I did miss out one bit that you're moving more into the realms of acting and stuff, which we'll get into later. But how the hell did you end up involved in all this? Because I know that, you know, your background, you worked on submarines and stuff, didn't you?
Yeah, I was in the Navy for 22 years, and in about 1980, I was on a submarine, and one of our officers was a magician as a hobby, and he tricked in the mess, and it really absolutely blew my mind. And one that really stuck in my mind was the invisible deck, i.e. the brainwave deck, and it blew me away. And then I remember when we came back off patrol, going to Blackpool for a weekend, and to
the Magic Convention.
Yeah, to the House of Secrets. And yeah, and I went in there and I actually said, can you sell me that invisible pack of cards? And he said, oh, do you mean this one? And demonstrate the trick. And I bought it. And that was the sort of like introduction to magic, really.
For people who haven't got any magic background who are watching or listening to this, what's the effect? Obviously, I know, but there'll be a lot of people watching or listening who don't.
Okay, well, the effect is that somebody thinks of a card or in their mind, say the 4 of diamonds, and then you can produce a pack of cards and you can open the pack and their card will be the one that's reversed, the only one in the pack. I mean, it's, as you know, it's an amazing effect. Yeah.
You should be on commission. There'll be tons of hypnotherapists and hypnotists going online now looking for the invisible deck or brainwave deck.
Yeah. So
for people, ironically, you could. I'm not saying you should, but hypnotherapists, seriously, who believe, and I don't mean that derogatory, but it's all about your own state of mind. But if you believe hypnotherapy is helped through having a certain rapport, you could actually, by merely saying to your hypnotherapy client, look, I've spoke to you for a few minutes, and then just let me try an experiment, and apparently go under your desk and apparently turn one card face down in the deck of cards and then put them back in the box and put them on your deck on the table. You don't actually, you're just miming that. It'll make sense if you buy a brainwave deck or an invisible deck. And then say to them, look, I've been listening to you and I've been getting a vibe and I want to see if we're in tune. Because if we're in tune, I know that the work we do here today together is going to be completely successful for you. And then get them to name a card, open the deck, show that there's one card face down, it's the card they said, and it's got an entirely different coloured back or whatever. And if you understand that moment, they will be like, what the hell, I don't know what's going on.
Blows their mind.
And that moment is arguably this, you've just achieved critical faculty bypass, haven't you?
Absolutely, yeah. It blew me away when I saw it. So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that was my introduction to magic, really. And then obviously I was still in the Navy up until 98, but I didn't get into hypnosis till 93, albeit when I was 16, I remember going to Blackpool and seeing Lord Payne. I'm sure you remember.
Oh, yeah. He used to do the Horseshoe Show Bar where obviously Ken Webster took over.
That's right, yeah. And I remember seeing it when I was 16. In fact, I still remember it to this day with him getting out the bicycle handles and him wearing a long gown like a monk type thing. And it was very droll, very boring. And, you know, I wanted it to really get going. And I remember seeing it then. And then the other hypnotist who's still going, who's amazing, is someone you don't talk about. So there you go. So we won't talk about.
You're allowed to. You're totally. It's not that I don't talk about them. I have nothing, despite anything that people may be aware of, and totally defamatory lies and bullshit they published in the past. Cannot deny the fact that as a stage hypnotist, they are a master of what they do.
Absolutely. I mean, I saw the gentleman, Andrew Newton, amazing, absolutely amazing hypnotist. And he was the one I saw after Lord Payne. We're going back a long time. I think I was about 18. And I even remember where it was at. It was at Stone Chair in Halifax in a pub. And again, that blew me away. But it just sat in the background, shall we say, of my mind. And that was it. It was just
in a pub. He'll hate the fact you've mentioned that.
Oh, okay.
Well, never worked in pubs, has he?
Well, he did a long time ago. Obviously, I'm a lot older, and but there you go. You know, we all got to start somewhere, haven't we? Even I started pubs and things, and then my basically until about 93. I think he was about 93, and then Paul McKenna became really top line on TV, didn't he? And that brought my interest back again. And so I bought the Encyclopedia of Hypnosis, Ormond McGill one, and I remember taking it to sea with me on the submarine. And I decided, I was saying to all my crew members, I'm going to learn this, because we were going away for 3 months. And I learned it parrot fashion. So I was learning something from, dare we say, 1920 or whatever in 1990 times. You know, it was a lot of years previous to that. So I'm learning very old school way, a long and drawn out method. And so I learned that. And obviously my captain wouldn't let me use on board at all. I wasn't allowed to practice or anything. So I had to wait till I get back before I could even start to practice on people, shall we say, for want of a better word. And I started doing it on my mates after I got back. So, but yeah, that's how I started really, and self-taught.
Once you're away on the submarine, is that literally you're underwater for the full 3 months?
Yeah, 3 months under the water. Yeah, my most amazing time was under the sea. Well, should I say under the ice for 10 weeks, and surfacing at the North Pole. That was the most amazing time. So that was brilliant, and we were at the North Pole for a day. So that was amazing. Yeah, but yeah, you're under the whole
surface. Did you get out of the submarine as well?
Yeah, when you surface, I mean, I've been to America, been all over, Caribbean, Gibraltar, all over the world on the submarine. Yeah, when you go on what's called a jolly, which is you go to various ports. I've been to America, fired the first Trident missile. I was on HMS Vanguard, which was the first Trident, and we fired that. And so it was amazing. Yeah, I love my time in the Navy.
I'm going to ask you two really random questions. It's only because you've been in a submarine, you say. It's not hypnosis related, but both of these are totally off the wall potentially. But I'm sure somebody listening or viewing will be glad to hear your view on this. Number one, when you surfaced in the submarine in the North Pole and looked outside, as it were, is it the end of the earth? Because the flat earthers, some of them say, well, the edge is where nobody goes. It's South Pole.
As such, no, because at the North Pole, it's a pack of ice, and it's moving all the time. So no, it's not flat either. But you can see for quite a way. And but yes, it was just very. In fact, it was only we went in May time, so it was only -10.
Oh, good God.
So it wasn't too bad actually, and we had the UK sent a couple of Nimrods up from the RAF to take photographs of us of our. There was two of us surface there, and all the lads on the ice and everything. So it was great. Yeah, we played football and all sorts.
The second bonkers question, slightly. There's talk. Well, you even see it on the History Channel sometimes now. In Search of Atlantis, the underground, underwater world. Yeah. Have you ever seen anything underwater that's really odd, other than maybe shipwrecks or whatever?
You can't see anything. You don't because there's no windows on the submarine.
Is there not?
No.
All right.
There's no windows. I've had some, dare I say, very scary times that I'm not allowed to talk about. But there is one where we're going off track now. But it is on Google, so I'm allowed to talk about it.
Yeah.
Just briefly mention it, and then people who are interested can look you up then.
Yeah, excellent.
On Google, and it's on HMS Scepter I was on, and it was in 1981, and we hit a Russian submarine. And I'll say no, but if you Google it, you can find out lots of information about what happened to us.
Oh, right. I'll definitely be doing that after. I'm sure other people, everyone's curious now, which is one of the keys: curiosity, attention, fixation of the mind for hypnosis. So, yeah, you got back to land, getting back onto the storyline. Sorry for diverting there. And you started practicing on your mates. Now, I always recall, or I can't bloody remember, it's years since I read Orman's book, but I'm sure even he says, don't try this out on your mates. They knew you when you weren't a hypnotist.
Absolutely correct. Yes, you are right. And I re-emphasize that to the same thing again. But again, I'm saying mates. I mean, it was the Navy lads. And when you're in the Navy, they're up for anything, you know, and yeah, let me have a go and stuff like that. They were like, yeah, go on. And because being in the forces, people are easier to hypnotize because you're so used to taking orders. Do this, do that, stand up, do this, move that. It was the most easiest people to hypnotize. Forces people, as you know, as in the military, the police, the nurses, teachers, people like that, easy.
Well, especially if they're commanding sergeant or whatever the rank is the one who's in charge of paying you, and he makes it known to them because they don't want to upset the person who'd booked you, do they?
Absolutely, yeah. So it was a good grounding for me to learn, you know, using, shall we say, lots of military friends like that. Yeah, it was good.
So you got the hang of it, obviously. Yeah. At what point, I mean, how do you go? At some point, you went from being in the Navy, in submarines, to learning this to, you know what, I'm gonna make a career out of magic, hypnosis, and all this weird stuff.
Yeah, well, what happens is they retire at 40 from the Navy.
All right.
So what I decided when I decided to learn hypnosis, I was about 33, 7 years to go. And so as well as me going away to sea, and when I was coming back from sea and I was on land, I would go and start, you know, doing shows and things like that. And then I was doing it in conjunction with still being in the Navy sort of thing. And as I was winding down, I decided this is what I want to do. I want to go live in Spain. I want to be a professional hypnotist. This is the shall we say, the third part of my life. You know, every 20 years. Third part. This is what I want to do. And so I decided that as I'm winding down, and I'll go and you know, chase my dream in Spain, and that's what I did. And for 20 years, I had a fantastic time.
Well, you became the known. It's changed a little bit in the past few years, but generally speaking, sort of from the mid-90s up till a few years ago, most of the I'm not going to say seaside, but the holiday resorts overseas, there'd be several hypnotists there, but one in particular was getting the best venues and the rest were just getting the crumbs. And you really established yourself in Ibiza. You were the one leading the pack out there.
Eventually I was. I mean, I wasn't when I first went there, because Ibiza, for those who don't know, is only a small island. It's only say 20 mile by 25 mile. And when I went there in '99, there was already 4 hypnotists on the island, and every one of them was working every night. It was so busy. It was fantastic. And then I was another hypnotist, and we all had work, and we all had enough work for every hypnotist. So it was amazing. And then eventually over the years, when things started to change in the industry, as in the hospitality industry, whereby you would have British hotels, German hotels, Spanish hotels, you know, that type of thing, lots of cabaret venues, it was changing in as much as that the British hotels couldn't survive as such, so they were having to bring in German, Spanish, they were going international per se.
Is that roughly when it started becoming all-inclusive as well? So people were staying in the hotels rather than going out to the cabaret venues?
Yeah, and it started to change drastically. And within a few years, the 5 hypnotists went down to 4, then to 3. Then for the past, oh God, 10 years or so, there was only 2 of us. And then we started to struggle as well. And then the other year, the other hypnotist left. And then last year, well, the other year, then I left, and that was it. There's no hypnotist there on the island at all now. It just impossible to work there now, unfortunately. It's such a shame, but I had 20 years out of it and had a great time.
So, I mean, obviously there's nobody there at the minute, because at the moment, for people finding this in weeks, months or years to come, we're recording this on the 22nd of May 2020. That's relevant because it's while the world's in the grips of the coronavirus, COVID-19 so-called, which obviously is would mean that, you know, even if there were hypnotists in Ibiza, they currently wouldn't be able to perform anyway. Which, I mean, I was going to come to this later. We keep going off and on, we keep coming back. We'll get there. It's all, but this COVID nonsense, whatever you may think of it, whether it's no more deadly than common flu or it is slightly more deadly, but the figures are so low that 98% of people are surviving. Let's focus on the positive things. Or was it really worth closing down the world? Some places haven't. And there's all those debates. We're not going to go into that. The bottom line is it's happened. At the end of it, there's going to come a point where each country opens up eventually. From what I can tell in England at the moment, although the other day they said they're not going to open schools at the start of June like they said they were going to do, but June at some point schools open, some pubs allowing people out in beer gardens. July, more hospitality opening, but no entertainment, no acts allowed on. The earliest I've seen mention of possibly, you know, allowing the odd bit of entertainment on is maybe some theatres being allowed to start again September, October-ish, but they would have to have, like, you know, the distancing in place.
Which would look pretty grim, wouldn't it? You know, in some theatres with
it's going to be a third of the capacity, yeah. So, I mean, there's going to be that. Is it financially going to be viable?
Absolutely.
And a lot of venues that book us, corporate event, I mean private events, if they're making it law that they're all going to have this social distancing in theory to follow for, as far as I can see, possibly, you know, a year or more. Do you think the entertainment industry is fucked at the moment? I mean when I can't, especially stage hypnotists, because a comedian could go on, doesn't have to touch anyone and can tell the gags. Magic wise, you could do your tricks and change your routine to not have to get volunteers on. But stage hypnotist, I don't argue you don't need to touch them and you don't have to do a drop back. You could have them stare at a light for that kind of long induction. But purely from a health and safety point of view, a hypnotist has got to be able to, if need be, run up and stop them falling out of the chairs, haven't they?
There's a whole new phrase now. I wouldn't touch somebody with a 6-foot barge pole. Maybe you do need a 6-foot barge pole to touch them with, you know. But yeah, it's a shame. It's all changing, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future for our show, shall we say, as hypnotists, and yeah, see where it goes. Nobody knows.
How would you handle it now if they turn around tomorrow and said, right, all venues can open back up, and then somebody booked you, but you've got to abide by the bloody 2 foot,
Yeah,
2 meters rather, 6 foot minimum social distancing, and you've got you've got to wear a bloody mask, despite the fact that they're shown to be useless under most circumstances. But you've got to. The rules are there. It's the only way they're going to, allow it to happen. How the frig would you go about doing a show?
I think I'd change and be a ventriloquist and wear a mask.
Excellent. Perfect time for vent action with a mask.
Yeah. Never seen them, would they? It'd be brilliant.
So you see, you've got a bit of an advantage because you've kind of started in the past couple of years, from what I've noticed. Is it like you're moving in? You mentioned about chapters in your life, submarining, hypnosis. It's like you're moving more towards acting and script writing and stuff. Tell us a bit about what's happened there. And
well, basically, when I left Ibiza, because it was coming to an end, shall we say, as it shows. And so I thought, right, I'll give it up. I'll come back to the UK, and I'm not bothered about going back. I can go anywhere on holiday. And I wanted to leave it all behind, because it's like when I was in the Navy, I left that behind. I did 22 years, left it behind. I've never been back, never been to any reunions. I move on, I move ahead. So I did that, and then I've left. I've never been back. I'm not bothered about going back. I've not necessarily kept in contact with people from the island, one or two, but otherwise I've moved on. And then I thought, right, what can I do now? So I'm always wanting to create things, because I get bored just sitting at home. So I thought, right, I'll get in. I've always been into acting, and I thought I'll go down that route, and that's what I decided to do. And when I was on the submarine, I used to do a weekly newspaper, a comic. I used to write all that.
All right.
And I've still got all copies of them upstairs and everything. So I kept them all, and it used to be amazing. They loved the comic that I'd write, the newspaper every week. And so I basically thought, right, I'll get into acting in my older life and do that. And so I started doing that and did quite a lot last year. And then I decided to write 2 comedies, and I only wrote one, actually. Last week I finished it, and it took me about 2 weeks, and it's just creative in your mind, sitting down writing it, and it's about 30 odd pages, and it's for a 30-minute TV comedy, or even it can be adapted to theatre. So I love writing and getting into that side of it. And then the point now is to try and get them out there and get them seen, shall we say, the script read, and then see where it evolves from there. Because once again, we don't know about television, theatre, etc. And while it's quiet, I thought, well, I've written these producers and television producers, etc. They're sitting at home being bored. I'll push my stuff out there so they can read them now, whereas normally they're busy out working. Now's a good time to get it out there.
Yeah, grasp the opportunity. Yeah, where they wouldn't. Yeah.
Well, that's what I've been doing that and enjoying it. So
well, I've noticed on your social media, I mean, you've had an amazing amount of jobs, given that it's something you haven't done for years and years and years.
Yeah,
you hit the floor running.
Yeah,
well,
after otherwise you could give up. I could have basically, if I had to come back from Ibiza and I had to think, oh God, here I am, 62 now, I've got to retire. I'll just sit there and wait for God. I can't do that. I've always got to be on the go. And as you know yourself, as being an entertainer, we always procreate and always looking for the next thing to do to get on in life and to make money and to enjoy ourselves, shall we say, and to keep your creative mind flowing as well. So that's what we do.
Yeah, it's important to keep going and be creative, because otherwise people, go downhill, as it were, in many respects.
Yeah.
But also finding that balance where you don't overexert yourself. So I've got to ask you, for people who don't know, watching or listening, you've had quite a few health scares in recent times, haven't you, sir?
I did, yes. Last October, I had the heart attack when I was on holiday in Spain, and it was quite a shock to me. And luckily, I was rushed off to hospital and had 5 stents put in, and then I was fine for a few months, but not allowed to work. And then I was going on my second holiday in January, went off to Cambodia for a month, and then had another heart attack while I was just sitting doing nothing, actually, recuperating, for want of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
Heart attack, and in Cambodia, the hospitals are pretty third world, and so they couldn't do anything there for me. And so I was just had to rest for like 3 days, and then they took me by ambulance across land for 7 hours to Bangkok. In blue light, 7 hours, and I luckily escaped death by that much. And when I got there, they'd found the blockage in my artery, and said that I was that close to death, and they immediately put another stent in. So I've now got 6. And then again, I was in Bangkok for a couple of weeks recuperating. And then after that, I just managed to come home. In fact, the COVID thing started when I was out in Bangkok, and we had hundreds and thousands of Chinese. It was Chinese New Year out there when it all started and everything. And then we flew back, and obviously I was saying then in January, they need to stop flying. They need to immediately shut the whole world down, because thing is going to spread like wildfire. And look at it now, a few months on. So yeah, so that happened to me, and but I'm here today, and I'm on 12 tablets a day, but I'm feeling great, and I go for a daily 4-mile walk, and I'm feeling good about myself. I'm feeling great.
Daily 4-mile walk, bloody hellfire, man!
Yeah,
it's me.
Yeah, a daily 4-mile walk, and I feel good, and so I'm just enjoying life as much as life, is going to continue for me. So you've got to think of it like that. Again, the doctors would say to me, "Oh, how are you feeling today? Are you depressed? Say this." No, I'm fine. I've done that now. I've had my heart attack. I'm getting on. Yeah, let's, what's happened to me. Let's move on. So I didn't, again, some people can get depressed, go down that route. Oh God, what's going to happen to me? All this lot. I don't think like that. I just think positive, positive, positive. Move on. That's happened. And that's it.
You're having the background, the Navy background, because military mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the military mindset, amazing. Yeah, and obviously hypnotherapy, self-hypnosis helped as well. So yeah, everything all combined in one. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, excellent segue there. You brought in the word hypnotherapy there. I've noticed on social media mentions now and again of people who you've helped with hypnotherapy, including getting dragged up to Blackpool to help people, and this, that, the other. So without me being too descriptive, some of them were they weren't just stopping somebody smoking. You've done things a bit more out of the ordinary, as it were. Can you give us a bit of insight into some of your more unusual and interesting hypnotherapy experiences?
Yes, certainly. My first one was a stroke patient. This was in Ibiza. A lady who was 42, and she'd had a stroke 5 years previous. Mm-hmm. And she said, "Can you help me?" And her arm was obviously, dead, shall we say, on the left side of her body, which is what happens in a lot of stroke patients, left or right side. And I lied. And I said, "Yeah, I can get your arm back." I lied to her. I've no idea. I had never, ever hypnotized a stroke patient in my life. Never. But I told her that I could get her arm back. And she said, "Okay." And I said, "When can you come and see me?" And I said, "Okay, I'll come, I don't know, let's say it's Tuesday, I'll come and see you Friday." And I took my video camera with me. Mm-hmm. I asked her if I could film the session. And she said, "Yeah, of course you can, no problem." And so I filmed the session, and it's on YouTube. And I spoke to her. She was left-sided with a stroke, so I spoke to the right side of her brain. And I told the right side of the brain to make new pathways, neurons, etc., blah, 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 and to raise her arm, a left arm, under hypnosis. And, after 20 minutes, she raised her arm like this. And I was like, oh, God, what the... blown away. And then she was a cleaner previous to this. And so I told her to imagine that she was picking a cloth up and she was cleaning on the top of a filing cabinet. So she'd pick up the cloth and she'd be like this, doing this with her arm and things like that. And then I was just, saying that to her. And then I would say to her, right, okay, when your arm's back to normal now. And then I would touch her on her arm and say, where am I touching you now? And she would say, like, my elbow, my wrist, my thumb, which she previously had no concept of anything. Her arm was, in her mind, dead.
Yeah.
And then when I brought her around, when she came out of hypnosis, her arm was still moving like this and everything. And obviously, to stroke patients, there's lots of muscle wasting. And I said to her, look, here's your arm back now, but you must religiously, because I know I haven't said this, I was a medic in the Navy for 20 odd years.
Ah, right, okay.
My background was medical. So I gave her a set of more or less physiotherapy instructions that she must do with her arm, like grab a tennis ball, do this, move your arm up and down, imagine you're cleaning, etc., to stimulate her arm, to get it back, her brain to say, like, my arm's got to do this. Will you do it? Yes, of course. And then I left her a week, and then I rang her a week later, and she said, my arm's died. And I said, what do you mean your arm's died? And she said, it's dead again. And I said, what do you mean? And she's just dead. And I said, did you do those instructions I gave you? And she said, no. And I said, do them, then your arm is going to die because you're not making it work. So I said, I'll come and see you. So I'll remember it vividly. I went to her house. She opened the door with her arm, as stroke patients do, tucked in her jean. And she said, look, my arm's dead. And I said to her, a direct suggestion, no hypnosis, nothing. And I said to her, raise your hand. And I pointed at her hand like that, and she went like that, took it out of her jeans and went like that. And she said, looked at me, looked at her arm, and she went, what the have you just done? And it was a direct suggestion. And I said, I haven't done anything, you've done it. And she couldn't grasp that she'd done it, even though I gave that direct suggestion. And then I said, you don't need. And I said, right, move your arm now. Your arm's back like this. Totally direct suggestion, no hypnosis. And her arm was back. And she was like, oh my God. And she was like this, moving it, looking, moving my arm, shouting at the family, screaming, everything. And again, I said, you must religiously do these instructions. If you don't, again, in a week's time, month's time, your arm will die again because you are not following, you aren't giving your brain those messages for it to open new pathways in your neurons, to exercise, to make your fingers, everything back again. And she never did it. And a few years later, unfortunately, her arm is back as it was, which is
that's sad. Do you think that in psychotherapeutic fields, well, in the medical arena, in some areas, it would be called secondary gain syndrome? Do you think that having the dead arm and that perception of disability brought her attention from family and stuff? That
absolutely, yes, of course, yeah, I do think so. Yes, I mean, she'd had it for so long, and then it was like, well, do I really want to do this? Do I want my arm back again? So possibly, I don't know. We're all individual in our own ways, but yeah, she could have done. But that blew me away. That through hypnotherapy, how powerful that is. That the doctors couldn't help her but through hypnotherapy, a stroke patient, wow, you know, and I've read online and lots of hypnotherapists are helping stroke patients nowadays. So that was amazing. And then another time I did another lady, a stroke patient, who, this was in Ibiza again, who came to me. She was in a wheelchair, and she turned up at my apartment with this other lady who I had no idea who it was at all. And she never mentioned, she just said, this is, I can't remember her name, but she was Spanish and spoke a very broken English. And she said, do you mind if my friend watches? I went, nah, it's okay. And so I just did the same thing and give her some suggestions, etc., etc. Told her she'd get back on her sticks, and she'd get out of her wheelchair, because her wheelchair she was using as a... She was using that, it was there, it was her thing to get round. And I said, you don't need that, get back on your sticks. And, you know, you're going from one up down, move back upwards sort of thing. And I did that, very powerful. And after the session, she started getting on her sticks and everything, and she hadn't done it for years. And then afterwards, after the session, she said to me, do you know who this woman is? I went, no. And she said, this is my doctor. And she said, I brought her along because I'd heard about what you do. And they're speaking Spanish, and I speak a little bit, but not fluent. And she was amazed at how much I'd helped her in a 40-minute session that a doctor hadn't helped her within, you know, a few years. So that was very powerful as well. So yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? As you know yourself with the hypnotherapy you've done and what people you've helped, as I'm sure many other hypnotherapists have done.
I'm going to put below this will be Dave's website link. There will also be a link. I'll go and find his YouTube, because I'm sure a lot of you will be interested in seeing, as he mentioned, the video of the session.
Yeah, yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, what approach was it? Literally just metaphorically speaking directly to that part of the brain, so-called parts therapy, unconscious communication, or direct suggestion therapy? What approach do you tend to use?
Well, I know that for a stroke patient, if your left side of the body is affected, it's the right side of the brain that's got the damage, and so I just directly spoke to the right side of the brain, and I spoke to it. And I said, look, the neurons, the nerves and everything, you're going to make new pathways, because if the old pathways are damaged, for want of a better word, I just direct suggestion saying that it's going to make new pathways down to fingers, thumb, etc. And you're going to make new pathways all the way down. You can do them instantly. And you're going to go to the little finger, blah, 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 and you're going to go to the thumb. And that's what I did, direct suggestion. And these new pathways are going to happen now. And then when I touch you, you'll be able to know which finger I'm touching, etc., etc. And it was instantaneously that I could say, where am I touching now? And she said, my thumb, my ring finger, my little finger, which, you know, for 5 years, she'd had no feeling whatsoever. So it was direct suggestion to that part of the brain and to the neurons, and telling them that's what they must do now and open new pathways. And it instantly worked. And it was amazing.
If anyone thinks that sounds a bit bonkers and out there, just do a bit of research on, in more recent years, neuroplasticity of the brain. It is actually now been, I hate to use the word science, because science is just what they lead us to believe, and quite often what we thought was correct from years ago gets proven wrong somewhere down the line. But so-called conventional science has proven that you can rewire the brain so that different areas can do the tasks that the area that was supposed to isn't doing because of brain damage or whatever. So you were already making that happen and going into those realms before it was as generally accepted as it is now.
Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to help, you know, for whatever way I could. I think as well, her belief in me, because she'd seen my shows in Ibiza. She'd come every week and see my shows, and she was amazed at what could happen to a stage, you know, in a stage hypnosis show. And I often get that, as I'm sure you do, when you do a stage hypnosis show, you get lots and lots of people come up to you and say, oh, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? And I tend to say, which I always do, I always put the, let's hypothetically say they live in Blackpool or wherever.
Yeah.
I'm in Ibiza for 6 months. I would say to them, right, when do you go home? Oh, next week. Okay, right. Go and see a hypnotherapist in Blackpool or London or wherever. Go and see one. Well, which one do I see? How do I know which one is any good? And I would say, look, and they said to me, do you know them? I went, no, England's a big place. I would say, the best thing you can do is email them, email 3 or 4, ask them what they charge, get recommendations, you know, go with who you feel comfortable with. And I would always pass the onus back to the hypnotherapist, because they're going to get work from me, because I'm out there doing it, and the people are seeing it, and they're either believing it or not believing it, but the curiosity of their mind is opened up, and they need help for whatever, whether it's depression or whatever. But as long as I could help them, give them that advice, and if they took that advice and go and do it, then, you know, wow, I feel great that I've helped someone to improve their life. So that's what I would do.
Excellent. Do you, and don't worry, this isn't a trick question. I'll clarify it's not a trick question in so much as I will say in advance, if you do this, I know you will do so in a manner that is completely safe.
Yes.
And ethical. So therefore, that removes any potential trick element of the question, because which would only apply in England anyway. Well, and maybe Sweden. There's a couple of other places that have laws, ridiculous laws like we do. But do you ever combine hypnotic suggestion technique, shall we say, with your performance of magic?
Never. The only reason I never mix hypnosis and magic is one reason only. If I did a magic trick in, let's say, a stage hypnosis show as an example, and I did a memory trick, whatever, mind reading trick. If some people, because of YouTube nowadays, they can find out pretty much lots of things.
Yeah.
If they found out it was per se a trick, then it would question in their mind that the whole hypnosis show is a trick and not real. That's my only reason why I don't do magic, and I separate it totally. One's for magic, one's for stage hypnosis. That's my only. Otherwise, if I thought they sat well together, and then I would probably maybe do a few magic.
I mean, that makes total sense in terms of, because of the fact that you don't want it to harm the perception of your stage hypnosis shows. What's your thoughts on the people out there that you've got an ever increasing? This is going to sound like I'm being somewhat critical. There's an ever increasing number of magicians.
Yeah.
Sadly, for a lot of them, I use that term loosely. And if that offends you, anyone watching or listening, that's because it's you. Otherwise, it wouldn't offend you. Who are learning street hypnosis techniques from certain individuals who haven't got a clue. I'm not going to mention names because they don't deserve the publicity. Who don't have a clue about health and safety, duty of care, the actual real dangers of hypnosis. And yes, hypnosis is potentially dangerous. Mr. Magician or Mr. Mentalist bloody watching or listening to this, who are combining, apparently they are told by the people selling them these things, very safe and innocent techniques combined with magical trickery in their close-up magical performances, and it's never going to enter their head about you know what you said, because they don't do stage hypnosis shows per se. What do you think about that sadly ever increasing breed of people who frankly haven't got a fucking clue what they're doing, in my opinion?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, my opinion, I'm old school, you know, I'm the old school, whereby you and being medically trained as well. I mean, you know, if somebody has I'm trying to think of something that they may have, an asthma attack or anything, you know, whatever. but whether it's through their own thing or whatever, they've got to not know how to deal with it, you know, and they wouldn't know anything like that, or you know, reaction or something. So yeah, I think it can be quite dangerous, absolutely. And so, you know, that's the reason why I do teach, but I only used to teach one person a year. And when I did that, I would only teach them one at a time, just only because I didn't want a bunch of like people, if I was teaching 20 or 30 at a time, eventually it's coming and stealing my job in Ibiza, because that's where I live and that's my job, you know.
Yeah.
So I wanted to teach one a year and say, you don't come to Ibiza because I'm here, and you know, you're better looking than me, and you've got hair, and you know, stuff like that. And so that's all I would do. But that was just my personal choice. That was all.
Also,
So,
importantly, I noticed people, you'll find at the links below if you go on Dave's website, in your book,
yeah,
you do cover things like first aid.
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's quite critical, and they should have that, you know, because you should know. It's no good knowing a little, what they say, a little bit of dangerous, a little bit of information is dangerous. Yeah, you should know everything, or know as much as you can to be, as you said, safe to do what you're going to do. So absolutely, and you know, I've had a couple of things happen in the past in my shows out of 20 years. And the first one that happened, it scared me a little bit, and I would, you know, it's never happened again. But other than that, I knew what to do. But anybody who wasn't, shall we say, trained or not sufficiently knowing what to do, it would scare the pants off them. And you know, so yeah, I think you should be adequately trained, should we say?
Yeah, I personally believe that whether you're a hypnotherapist or stage hypnotist, equivalent of what is in England classed as First Aid at Work Act regulations level, first aid training, it should be a bare minimum.
Absolutely, I did a first aid instructor's course and everything, but I said being medically trained anyway, it was fine. You know, 20 odd years as a medic in the Navy as chief medical officer when I left, so it was quite, you know, second nature to me, shall we say. Really, any medical problems that will pop up, shall we say. But yeah, I mean, I once the story that I'm going to tell you was, I was doing a stage show, and it was my second show that night, and it was midnight. I was on, and a lady come on stage as well as all the other people, and I did the fall back. And again, as soon as I lay them on the floor, you look at them, make sure they're okay. And she stopped breathing, and just, you know, straight on the back, stopped breathing. And I was like, oh my, what the? And I've turned on side into a recovery position and stopped the show, obviously. And it was heaving. There was like 500, 600, 700 people there. Stopped the show, put her in a recovery position, and tried to bring her around, and she was having none of it, nothing at all. And I woke the other people up, sent them off stage, and this lady's still in this recovery position. There's still all these people chatting, oh my God, you know, what's going on. And eventually she came round, and so I took her off stage. We'd obviously stopped the show. This is about 12:30 now in the morning. And I took her backstage and I said, what happened? And she said, oh, I suffer from sleep apnea, and I've been told that I should never take part in hypnosis shows.
Oh, for flip's sake.
Yeah. And I said, why did you get up then? Because obviously, like you, like and other hypnotists, we all have at the beginning of the show, we have a pre thing that we'd say, you do not take part if you suffer from XXXXX, covering those things, you know. And she said, oh, I'd had a drink and I thought I'd get up and help you. You know, it's a midnight show. And I said, please, whatever you do, do not go and take part in a stage hypnosis show ever again. And she agreed. And she was with a family, so I brought the family in, and you know, the out the front now they're just playing background music. And so I said, right. I said, you okay now? And she said, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, no problem. And she was fine. And I said, okay. And so I said, look, do you mind if I go out and tell the audience what's happened, because otherwise what will happen is they will think that I caused you to stop breathing, which it wasn't me. It was your sleep apnea. Do you mind if I tell them? She said no. So I went back out on stage and I said, ladies and gentlemen, I need your attention a moment. Just to let you know, the ladies are fine. The reason that she stopped breathing was because of a sleep apnea, nothing to do with hypnosis, blah, blah. However, the show's finished. That's it. Good night. And then we all went, boo, boo, boo. I went, do you want me to carry on? They went, yeah, carry on, carry on. I'm thinking, you're joking. So balls of steel per se, went back down in a seat, and I said, right, anybody want to get up and help me? Big flood of people come up on stage, did the show, and it was brilliant. And that was balls of steel, but yeah, so wow, it was a scary time, but that was the one and only time in 20 odd years, and I was doing shows every night, sometimes twice a night, that happened to me. So otherwise nothing else has happened, shall we say. Nothing else. Northern people.
So, have you ever had, well, no, I'm going to rephrase that. Have you ever had? It's probably highly unlikely in Ibiza, I imagine, but I mean, you've done shows elsewhere. I'm going to rephrase this purposely because I suspect the answer will be yes, and it's more a case of when did it happen? Why do you think it happened? One of those nights where you go out, there's a reasonable size audience, but you ask for volunteers, and no bugger wants to volunteer.
Loads. Absolutely loads of times. Any hypnotist who tells you that his show is the biggest lie in the world, I will put my hand up and say I've had loads in Ibiza.
We've all had it, of course we have, yeah.
Absolutely loads and loads and loads of them. And I've just gone home with my tail between my legs, or I used to do initially. I'd go home, I'd be berate myself, I'd be upset, I would blame myself that it was me, and it would take me a while, to get over that. And in the end, after so many years, you get long in the tooth. If you don't do a show, you go, I'm off home now, bye, good night, and that's it. It's totally different. But in the beginning, it destroyed me. It really hurt. Absolutely. As I'm sure many other hypnotists about the same. The easiest ones I found, the easiest shows I ever found were on cruise ships, because you've actually got a known audience, 1,500 people, 2 shows, you've got all them people there, and they're coming, they just want to be entertained, they want to join in. So they were the easiest shows I've ever done. But that's personally.
Yeah, I've not done shows officially on cruises, but I was the first headline, sounds like I'm bragging, first headline speaker on the Hypnotist entertainment cruise, the incredible hypnotist Richard Barker in America.
Oh yeah.
Started in 2013.
Yeah.
So while we were on there for the several days in between delivering the lessons to the students who were there, obviously going around the ship, and I did hypnotize people. All right, was at sea, so I wasn't breaking any UK Hypnosis Act before anyone jumps on saying, what a hypocrite, he's always on. It was completely legal and safe. But 2 things struck me. One, it was like, it was like a posh, I am taking the piss a bit, but it's like a posh holiday camp in a tin can.
Yeah.
And you're around all the bloody people, and there are, no offense, I've got a lot of American friends, so obviously I don't mean you guys and girls, but a lot of Americans, they're walking around permanently hypnotized.
Yeah.
And you can't escape them in between your shows or your performances on the cruise. You've got to put up with them because they score you on a rate card, don't they? And if you get below a certain score, that's it. You ain't getting booked again. That's the only reason why I've been offered cruise work and I've turned it down, because it's like, I did that with Richard Barker and I thought, for flip's sake, imagine if I had to be nice. When you're on the payroll of the cruise line, you've got to be nice to the punters, haven't you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and you'll see on Dave's YouTube channel, there are videos up there, and you will see there's some video footage of you on the cruise lines, actually, on YouTube, as I recall.
Yeah.
So we've kind of gone into the areas of stage hypnosis. We've rounded into the areas of magic, hypnotherapy. Um, but now you really are, you have moved more into, by the looks of it, your energy seemed to be more aimed towards the acting and the script writing and stuff. Where do you feel hypnosis comes into it now? Is that just a case of, are you actively plugging for work, or is it just if it comes in you'll take it, but otherwise your energy's on other stuff?
Absolutely, yeah. Focus my energy elsewhere. If somebody, whenever it's going to happen again, I mean, if it's going to be a couple of years down the line when shows are going to happen, I don't know. But if I'm lucky enough that somebody decides to pick up the phone or email me and say, will you come and do a show? Absolutely, I'll jump on the bandwagon, because being an entertainer, it's in your blood. Do you know what I mean? So I'd jump on it tomorrow, yeah, as we all would. So yeah, I'd do that. But in the meantime, I need to focus my energy on the acting, on the script writing, and it gives you a new lease of life, rather than just wait for the phone to ring or whatever, or an email to come. I'm moving. I'm using my mind for something else and something I'm enjoying, and so it's like, keeping your brain going, for want of a better word, and keeping yourself from getting in that rut, especially in this COVID times now, that people could get depressed if they don't, use your mind and sit home and, oh God, when's my next show coming? What am I going to do? So, I'm stimulating myself all the time to do that, and I'm enjoying it, because I'm no good at. If I was good at DIY, I'd be out there now, things and making this, that, and the other. But I'm rubbish, so I have to use my mind in different ways that only I can do. Otherwise, I'd be out there, fixing cars and things like that. But so we all adapt to our own mind, what we can do, don't we?
Excellent. I'm going to ask you, I've got like three more questions. We're 57 minutes in. We're going to slightly overrun. They all sound a little bit negative at first sight, but it's for the educational benefit of people at home that I'd appreciate your view and experience. Firstly, do you think, when I was interviewing Ken Webster a few weeks ago, we discussed the area of that these days, the reactions that people are giving, having to suggestions in a hypnosis show, that they are maybe not quite as animated or imaginative as they used to be. And we went into the rounds that with, Ken and me discussed the, with the whole social media, people being addicted to iPhones, that people are less imaginative. What do you think about that?
Absolutely agree. I've seen the changes over the years. I agree. I saw the interview you did with Ken, and yeah, I totally agree with it. I would see it change over the 20 years I did it from Ibiza. I would see the change in social media. People would be sitting there on the phones in front of you. You're doing a show, and there's, want of a better word, dare I say, 18, 20-year-old kids on the phone, and you're doing this thing, this sketch, want of a better word. And the attention span is gone. The attention span's not there. They're on the phones, and you would find that quite a lot. And it would be quite upsetting. And initially, it would get to you, because you'd be like, "Why are you not watching my show? If you don't want to be here, why don't you go outside?" You'd want to, dare I say, chastise them. And in the end, you have to live with it. And yes, they're not as animated anymore, because they're not using the brain either. They're just like this, and it's sad, but it's the way it's happening in the times of the world changing.
Question two, the three that are in my head. You've been all over the world. Hong Kong performing, or I believe that was in an expats venue, so they were English speaking, weren't they?
Hey, it was. Hard Rock Cafe, 4 times I did there.
Yeah. So they were expats English speaking, were they?
They were English. They speak English in Hong Kong, but on the night on the first time it was all English. On the second time I did it, it was English and Chinese, so I had an interpreter.
Okay, well, that's what I was going to ask you, because I spoke a little bit about using interpreters on another Hypnosis Week interview. You can find it at hypnosisweek.com with JT.
Yeah.
what was your experience of using an interpreter? Did you go through the pretense of apparently hypnotizing them so that people would think, as they're speaking to them, interpreting you, that they've got the hypnotic power? Because that's the way I've done it in the past.
Yes, as such, yeah. Or I'd just say, if I'm saying this, say that to them, and then they do that. The difficulty I found is that it's a delayed thing, isn't it? Because you're telling it in English, and then they've got to do it in Chinese, and then you're waiting for that reaction to happen. So it's like it's not fast and snap. That it takes a little bit before you get that sketch to work, shall we say? So that's the only downside I found to it. Yeah,
I found it first time doing it I'm saying it, interpreters then saying it, and you're thinking, right, in a minute, by now, if I'd said it, they should be reacting, but obviously they've got to wait for the interpreter. Then by the time you're getting the reaction, there's the time disconnect, and I'm stood there thinking, this isn't working.
correct.
And then suddenly they start doing it.
Yes, and also it's how they say it as well, because when we're doing a sketch, we may enforce or make us we I don't know, may raise your voice or a direct command. You're giving it totally different as to they may say, oh, do this. It's not going to come across as well, is it?
Yeah.
So so it does lose its communication in that respect. Yeah.
Just so even to this day, I was in Sweden, not end of last year. Was it end of last year? No, it wasn't the end of last year. It was the end of the year before filming the TV show. And I was doing the old alien sketch. When you speak fluent alien, you're the interpreter. And so the interpreter, they're all Swedish people, but fortunately the one who was apparently the alien interpreter spoke enough English that I could interact and say what the alien's saying.
Yeah.
But I didn't bloody know when they were suddenly, she's asking them stuff and then the aliens are responding. I didn't know, were they speaking Swedish or were they speaking alien?
Yes.
And all right, it was getting laughs, but I didn't know. And literally afterwards, the producer guy, the artist, GSC Jeeks, and he came up to me and said, how do you think that went? And I went, oh yeah, it went fine. And he said, well, you don't seem 100% happy. And I had to admit to him, I said, well, weren't they just speaking Swedish? Because that's why I come to that conclusion. They were just speaking bloody Swedish, weren't they? It sounded the same as before they were aliens. He went, oh no, rest assured, they were definitely not speaking Swedish. Yeah. And I didn't bloody know. So I'm stood there thinking, this isn't working. It's madness. Interpreters, lack of imagination, the future. And I don't mean COVID-wise, because obviously the whole social distancing thing, but something of a spoke in the wheels. But let's just say we get through this and people, you're legally allowed to get closer to people again. You're allowed to touch them, do drop backs, whatever. Yeah. And let's just say that even when that's allowed, there's still going to be issues. Could there be people who in their head, could of the fear that's been instilled, that won't feel comfortable with volunteering in those circumstances. But we get to a point where people feel comfortable again. It's as it once was, so to speak, but we moved on several years. Society's carrying on the way it is. What do you think the future of stage hypnosis is? Because my prediction is that give it 10, maybe 20 years at most, and it'll, certainly in the way we know it now, it'll fizzle out, because the more we get TV shows where the reality TV shows where people will do more and more extreme things without any hypnosis, it just defeats the object, I think.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I think, what's happening now in this area of COVID times, should we say, is for the future. I think we, especially, me as the older hypnotist, so I just think it's going to decay away, fizzle out, as you say. I think it will. It'll just run its course, and that's it. I don't think I'll be working anyway, but anybody who's coming into it, I just don't think it's going to happen. I just think there is no future, as in stage hypnosis. I don't think so. I think it'll just fizzle out. But you could prove me wrong, you know, in 10 years' time, if I'm still alive, we can look back at this and go, hi, he proved you wrong. Or they can say, oh, he was right, or they were right, shall we say. But yeah, I think it will fizzle out.
And comedy.
Yeah.
In general, I mean, you saw the whole conversation. People can look. We had this debate with Ken Webster. I had it with Christian Taylor, Doctor Strange as well. We live in a time now where, on the one hand, we're supposed to be politically correct, non-racist, non-sexist, non-ageist, not funny.
Yeah.
And yet, on the other hand, you can get your Asian comedian go on television and do a complete act of comedy taking the piss out of Asians because he's taking it out of himself.
Yes.
So we can get away with doing it. But then we've got the grey area in between where you'll get your likes of Jimmy Carr. And if you're not in England, go on YouTube and type in Jimmy Carr and go and have a look. Who will do basically obscene material, you know. I bought myself a rape alarm, so I don't forget when to rape people. And yeah, I mean, that's one of his milder ones, seriously. I mean, what do you make of the whole comedy line? I mean, years ago in the early 90s, people were pointing the finger at me, saying what I did was obscene. And it wasn't, because most of that was just the way the bloody media wrote it up. Other than a few routines that were, I shouldn't have really done, but there you go. But these days, there's worse going on the reality TV shows than anything I ever did, or anything that any of us stage hypnotists has ever bloody done. And yet, on the other hand, you've got people going, you can't do this kind of comedy. It's an oxymoron.
It's difficult, and I don't think I'm very old school. I'm more the 70s type comedian type things. I'm more like, you know, have a laugh and you say something and it's not meant offensive in any way. It's a joke is a joke, but because I'm the old school. When I watch, I choose not to watch them, but alternative comedians, I just don't get it. I don't think it's funny. It doesn't make me laugh. I don't understand it. Maybe because I'm not intelligent enough, but it's just not funny. So I don't get it nowadays. I'm like, that's not funny. So to me, I like a joke that makes you laugh, you know, and I suppose each to our own, aren't we?
Not a joke by definition. It's supposed to have a setup and a punchline. And all right, people like Jimmy Carr do follow that model, and that's why I think it's. But yeah, like you said, there's loads of people. They're just, hey, it's great to be here. Oh, don't you just hate it when you miss the bus?
Yeah.
What? That's not a gag.
No.
They call it observational comedy.
Yeah, and it's not, to me, it's not funny. But again, you know, as I said, I'm the old school. I'm not one of these young ones who are growing up in the different, you know, different age nowadays and different social media. So, but I'm trying to keep up with social media as you are. You know, I'm on it and addicted to it. But aren't we all? It's a way of life, and it's the way we get bookings, the way that, you know, the way we speak to people, as in like today now with this. So, you know, we have to keep up with it. We get left behind, don't we?
Well, yeah, and ironically, in a minute when after we finish this and I've downloaded it, by the end of today, this will be getting posted around social media. It's got good and bad sides. Well, excellent. We have gone over the hour. Thank you very much indeed for your time, Dave. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for asking me. It's a pleasure to ask me, so thank you very much. And I watched quite a lot of your other videos as well, interviewing people, so thanks for allowing me to chat with you.
Hey, thank you. And people at home, if you're on, whether you're on the audio version of this, listening with no pictures, or you're watching with pictures, in any event, below this video will be a link to Dave's website where his book is available. If particularly when you, and also there'll be a link to Dave's YouTube, if when you've looked at his videos, or perhaps you've seen Dave perform in the past in Ibiza, and you're deciding you want to learn stage hypnosis, perhaps Dave particularly resonates with you, everyone has their own right teacher, then I'm sure that if you contact Dave, he may still consider taking on the odd personal training with people. And as I say, I'll also put a link to Dave's YouTube as well, and his social media. So you can keep an eye out for when his scripts transform onto the stage, screen, or airwaves.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Thank you once again, Dave. It's been an absolute pleasure.
All the best. Thanks.
All I've got to do now is work out where to press stop recording.